and welcome to a very, very exciting discussion because it's not often we get to discuss a Christopher Nolan movie on our channels. But with the introduction of Fellowship of Fandoms under the Fellowship of Fans umbrella, we are now able to do so. So, if you guys can, if you're interested, like and follow that channel. It greatly helps our new initiatives into diving into all things nerdy. Um, and before we dive into this, I'd like to introduce our panel for today. We have the Myth Master Jessica on the stream. How are you doing, Jess?
Hi, I'm doing so good. I am so excited to talk about this movie.
Awesome, awesome. I can't wait to learn more. I wish I paid attention more in my history classes, but what time like the present? And also joining us is Mr. Harry. How you doing, Harry?
Hello, hello. Sorry, my voice just went there. Hello. Very excited. Saw the movie on Friday, and yeah, I think this is our first trial stream, or our first beginning of doing this with Fellowship of Fandoms, and then yeah, very excited to discuss this. What a movie to start with, by the way, as well. I have to say.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so I figured how we'll handle this stream, just for anyone tuning in. We don't want to give away spoilers too early in the stream because I have a feeling a lot of people have not yet had the opportunity to see it. Sold out theaters, etc., etc. So for the most part, I would say the first half of the stream will be non-spoilery, and we'll have a fun rubric to try out for this discussion. As we go through it, definitely let us know in the comments if you have any feedback or if there's a category you think we missed that would be more interesting to discuss when going through different movies. Because the idea is to have this format as something we can continually do going forward. So, love to hear your feedback on it. And without further ado, before we dive into the specifics, let's just start very high level. So, Jess, you saw it in 70 millimeter, right?
I did. Yes, I am so blessed to live in a city that has one of the very few IMAX 70 millimeters in the US. So I went on my own little odyssey about a year ago to get these tickets, which sold out so fast. But I managed to snag a couple, and we saw it on Thursday night, and it was unbelievable. I mean, I it's the first movie that's ever been solely shot for IMAX in 70 millimeter. So like recently, seen Project Hail Mary, which switched aspect ratios throughout to great narrative effect, I might add. And Sinners as well did the same thing, but this one was all in the IMAX aspect ratio, which was insane. So it was amazing. The sound was amazing. They're kind of sprucing up the IMAX theaters for this movie specifically, and you could tell. I mean, it was an experience. I Anyone who can should see that. I'm sure it'll come back around. They'll bring it back closer to award season. But yeah, it was an immediate 5 stars for me. I've always loved Nolan. I love Greek mythology and the classics, which we'll get into more later. So yeah, just an amazing experience. I'm still digesting several days later.
Awesome, awesome. And as this movie was rolling out, there was a lot of promotion for IMAX and its technology. And Adam Savage had a kind of a background video on his channel showing the IMAX reels, and they're literally the size of a person. They are massive. And I think he said something like it was like 300 pounds or something like that. It's
Yeah,
insane.
like I think 287 pounds or something. They do this little spiel before the IMAX showing. One of the workers does, so they tell you all about it. And yeah, they have to use like a forklift to move it around. It's crazy.
Absolutely insane.
So worth it though.
Definitely. And in interviews with Christopher Nolan as well, he talked about how he went to, I think it was the Museum of Science in Chicago, or a museum in Chicago, and they were screening materials in the IMAX format back in the day. And he was like, "Hey, why don't movies do this?" And it's ironic hearing that comment because there's a Boston Science Museum close by, for me, that we go on field trips as like a kid, and they have something called the Omni Theater, which is like a
Yeah.
massive screen that's almost it's kind of in a
Like
curve.
orbit,
cur-
yeah,
and
curvature.
I'm like, that's like seeing that as a kid. I was like, why aren't movies like this? So I'd be curious to see if it ends up navigating to that at some point. But yeah, pretty cool
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. All right. Now moving on to Harry. What was your just gut reaction coming out of the theater? Like, how did you feel about this Odyssey?
Yeah, so I was of course quite upset to not be able to get to watch it in 70 millimeter IMAX, but I don't feel like I didn't miss much. I did get to watch Oppenheimer in that in LA,
Oh.
which was, a crazy experience. But yeah, coming out of it, I feel like nowadays with movies coming out, you don't get to feel that sense of epic. And I feel like I came out of this, and just because of the realism, and Christopher Nolan spoke about it, where there's a difference between how he would show the gods, whether it would be physical or if you CGI, but everything felt so real. For example, the Cyclops, etc., etc. But everything felt so grounded, and that made it feel like even more epic. And I feel like in the second act there was a little bit with the pacing I had, but the payoff in the final act, when we get back to his home, I felt like was all definitely worth it. And yes, it was coming out of that, and especially with the third act, I was like, yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. 5 stars as well, and that's why I'm so excited to talk about it.
Well said. Yeah, for me, coming out of the theater, I was definitely blown away. You mentioned pacing, which we'll definitely get into in a little bit in one of the categories, but there's times where I was literally on the edge of my seat, like, oh my god, how are they going to get out of this? And yeah, it was kind of like a culmination of a lot of Nolan's previous work in this film. Like you can see hints of Oppenheimer, hints of The Prestige, hints of Dunkirk,
Tenet
even. Oh, dare I forget Tenant?
and Interstellar. Yeah, it's
It-
definitely that's a perfect way to put it. It feels like the culmination of his entire filmography up to this point was
yeah.
making this movie.
So yeah, I see it. You saw it on screen and seeing the history of all of his works. It was definitely amazing, and yeah, I'm probably at a 4.5 out of or 5 out of 5. We'll have to see. I'll have to see how this conversation goes. But yeah, really great stuff. All right, so let's move into this rubric and see how it goes. So we're gonna start with phase one, first impressions and the experience. So we got a high level from everyone, but now we'll dive into a couple of metrics to see how this pans out for the average watcher. We have something we're toying with called the significant other score, which is if you were to bring a date on this movie, do you think they would enjoy it? General appeal, which is just if you're someone not into Greek mythology in this case, would you like this movie? And the first category that we're going to discuss is the ride, which is dealing with pacing. So without further ado, let's move to the ride. So in the ride, Harry kind of alluded to it a bit. So maybe we'll start with you, Harry. How well did the movie manage its pacing? Did it keep you on the edge of the seat or did it drag at times? And as a reminder, this is the non spoilery section. So I think you can reference anything that's in the original story, but maybe like with the Christopher Nolan editions or, his messaging and stuff, we'll try to leave that out for now.
Sounds good. And yeah, um, I think, yeah, it's a consistent thing, I think, with Christopher Nolan, with all his, amazing, attributes he brings to filmmaking and directing films. One of the things sometimes is, the pacing. But I don't feel like this film in the end did have that issue because of the payoff in the third act. Um, I think going into it, the first half an hour to an hour, the getting a lot of the flashbacks, seeing, a lot about Odysseus, why he ended up on the island, recollecting his memories. It was all very well done. And then I feel like once we shift into more the second act, when we see him going from island to island, and then of course, no spoilers, we start to realize the payoff for that is the big twist near the end, which we find out. Um, I think it was good. I feel like at times maybe when going from island to island, they could have maybe shortened it a little bit, but it wasn't something like major. Like that's like a nitpicking thing at best. And then once, of course, if you've seen, this is not really a spoiler because it's been out for like 2, 3,000 years. But when Odysseus, does make it back home, um, then it really starts to picking up again. And I feel like it would be even cool to see even more of this, the court politics. Maybe if Nolan could have added a bit of more of that into there and seeing how that unfolded. But yeah, I think my baseline take on it is the pacing ended up being fine because the payoff was that good. And that's where I stand on it. And do I need to give a score? Or is it just that enough?
That's enough for now. Yeah, we
Perfect.
might try to at the end summarize our thoughts and see where it lands, but
Cool.
for now we'll yeah just keep on the discussions. Great. All right. So for you, Jess, how did you feel about the ride?
Yeah, I thought the ride was absolutely thrilling. I mean, it's a, a little bit less than 3 hour movie, and it feels like shorter. I mean, it's like Harry said, the first couple acts are slower than the third because he goes absolutely crazy style in the third. That doesn't mean the first two acts are slow. I think that his Nolan really flexes his ability to use a non-linear storyline here
Mm,
in a way that, you know, I think is the best that he's done because the non-linear way in which he tells it makes a couple emotional payoffs at the end and twists like hit so much harder in a way that just like I feel like for sometimes people say Nolan is not like the best with emotion or anything like that. Not here. He's killing it. I mean, just to where I'm full on sobbing in the theater at some of these things. Like the reveals were so exceptional, and I think it interwove the stories of the main characters in a way that really kind of mirrors the way that those stories are interwoven in the poem from Odysseus and Penelope and Telemachus, all kind of making their way back to each other. So yeah, really, really great pacing, really exceptional editing work here from I think his longtime collaborator. I think her name is Jennifer. It's spelled lame. I don't want. She was not lame at all. Um, amazing, amazing. Like I think editing for this movie might be getting some awards because it's just so good. There's maybe one sequence. I think that so he's. We'll get into this more later. There's maybe one sequence I feel could have been cut,
mm,
only because it's retreading the Cyclops sequence in a way. But I think that Nolan, the sequences he did keep, are because they play into the central theme of not only what Nolan is doing, but also the poem of the Odyssey itself. So other than that, I think he cut what was not contributing to his central thesis and left what needed to be in there.
awesome. Can't wait to hear what that scene is. I have to make a mental note to bring that up again. And for me, I feel like we have like an image of the ride being a roller coaster. I feel like with pacing, good pacing, a film does that where you have your ups and downs. So there was some dips in the story, but it helped with the, I guess you could say like the final drop of the roller coaster. A lot of build up to something pretty crazy. So we'll get into that in the spoiler territory, but yeah, I think this was I guess I don't wanna throw shade, but I guess I'm throwing shade. When I when I saw The Way of Water with James Cameron, I was in the theater and I was just like, wow, this movie is very long and it's probably roughly around the same as The Odyssey. The Odyssey went by in a blink of an eye, just like Oppenheimer, which was around the same runtime, more or less. Those movies flew by, but for whatever reason, The Way of Water dragged for me. So I don't know. That's I'm sure that's personal preference.
Bite your
Sorry,
tongue.
Avatar fans.
I think, yeah, I think The Way of Water is probably a bit longer. Um,
Okay,
but similarly, that third act goes crazy style.
that's fair. That is fair. All right, so now we're gonna move into the next category, which kind of decides who this movie who applies to this movie, like who should go see this. So general appeal, we can think of movies, trying to think of one that's very like artsy and you need to have a lot of knowledge of the background to fully enjoy it. Escaping me right now, but I'm sure there's a million. Technically, if you wanted to enjoy Lord of the Rings to the fullest, you would love to have the background knowledge when like Gandalf or someone mentions as a background uh, character or something from the Silmarillion. You won't get it the first pass, but having the knowledge makes further watches more enjoyable. But for the general appeal score, it's more so just who's the target audience? Is it broad enough? Does it have universal appeal? Or is it a niche film for a specific crowd? I'll start first since I I think this category could go relatively quick. I was curious. I was wondering, like, oh, it's a Greek mythology. Like, should I have paid attention more in history class to understand the story? But in Nolan fashion, he can take complex ideas and make them digestible enough, and he puts the trust in the audience to come along for the journey. So, yeah, I'm sure as we go along with the further discussion, especially in the spoiler territory, I'm going to learn more about maybe some of the characters that he blended together, omitted, etc. But overall, it was very accessible. The moral of the story or the messages he wants to get across are very universal. You don't need to be a Greek historian to get those. So yeah, that's kind of where I land on that. How about you, Jess?
Yeah, I would say this one, I mean, if you're a fan of Christopher Nolan in general,
Mm.
you're gonna love this movie. If you're interested in seeing a master working at the height of their craft, you're gonna wanna see this movie. If you're into cinema and you wanna see something new, something filmed entirely for IMAX, filmed entirely on location, mostly practically. I mean, you're gonna be interested if you are a fan of any of the major stars who are a part of this film. You would probably go see this movie. Um, and yeah, there's people who love Greek mythology. Um, there's a lot of contemporary interpretations and retellings that are very popular these days. Um, this is an adaptation, which in and of itself is an interpretation of a text. All translations are interpretations of a Greek text. So I think that anyone interested in adaptation as a medium would also do well to go see this movie because it's an excellent one. Yeah, the themes, like you said, digestible, extremely timely. The central thesis of this poem is kind of unchanged from what its original form was thousands of years ago, and it's extremely relevant to our society today. So, yeah, can't recommend it enough. I think it's going to be doing big numbers as it already is.
Oh yeah, and I can't wait to discuss because my background knowledge of myth is very minimal. I'm curious in later conversations talking about the messages of the original poems, the original stories, versus what Christopher Nolan shaped it to, because I have a feeling there's some cool things there. We'll get into that in
Yeah,
the spoiler
I got a lot
section,
to
I feel like.
say.
Awesome.
I don't think it'll be part of it won't be super spoilery. Um, so yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see if we can sneak it in. We'll see if we can sneak it in the non-spoiler section. And how about you, Harry? You feel like this is a good general appeal viewing? Anyone go see it kind of thing, or think it's more
Yeah,
niche?
yes, and I'll keep it quick. But I think there's one. I think there's one like clear reason why it has a general appeal, and why Christopher Nolan was trying to target a broader audience and not keep it niche. I think it's because the dialogue. I think if you listen to them speak, throughout the film, I think if he was trying to keep it more, not gatekeepy, but like keep it to like a more high level of, you know, people having to understand, the old languages, more references. But no, I think yeah, some of the lines that people remember the most is I think when Odysseus is on like the beach has been here 10 effing years, let's go home, stuff like that. And that's literally the
Which is
most
so good.
yeah, that exactly is one okay. It's not some, close intimate scene where he's speaking in old old Greek, not old Greek, but like old English style, and then referencing something from the Iliad. Da, 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 da. It's stuff, moments like that, and that's what appeals to general audiences the most.
Well said.
Which
I
I'll
was
have
just
more
look.
to say about that later. I don't know which category that might fit best in talking a little bit about the choice for the accents and the dialogue structure and how that reflects the reality of the poem itself. We could
Ooh,
save it where it might
uh,
best fit.
two good sections for that is probably in the authenticity
Okay.
category and adaptation. So yeah, great. I just looked up because Harry mentioned the f bomb dropped in the script. I was like, oh, was this PG-13 or R? And I looked, it's R, and I'm like, this thing. I feel. I mean, there's a lot of violence. Okay, maybe that's why I got its R, but I feel like I could have squeaked by with a one f bomb drop. But yeah,
Yeah, I
whatever.
think it could have easily been lower. Because with the ratings, you can say I think the F bomb once, and then it only did come up once in the film. So yeah, maybe that's Nolan's decision.
Hmm.
It's probably more the violence. I think the amount of blood and direct violence shown
Hmm.
on screen, and maybe even that he didn't want to limit himself by trying to get it to PG-13. So it was like, let me just make it and it can be R if it needs to be, and then we'll see what happens once the film is like done being edited, see what rating it gets. Yeah, because there was only one F bomb. So I thought it was
Yeah.
R, and then there was one F bomb, and I was like, did they make it PG-13? But no, I didn't end up looking up what it ended up being. So it was R.
So parental guidance suggested. So keep that in mind for the general appeal.
No, the
Awesome.
one thing I will say though, at least you can watch this film basically with your parents, because I remember with Oppenheimer, that scene that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
As well, it was only with Odyssey had the same thing, but there wasn't really.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, it seems like violence was like the major contributor, I'd say, to the R. But yeah, everything else. So, general appeal. I think that actually is a good segue into the significant other score because you can kind of rope in family and friends into that category. So, you can answer this like, would it be awkward to watch with your parents? Is it a good casual crowd pleaser? Does it spark fun discussions or is it too heavy? And I can give an example of it being too heavy. I once went on a first date to watch The Whale, and that was a big mistake. So that yes, there is a that's the reason for the significant other score is you can make bad choices.
Well, I could have told you that was going to be a bad choice.
Sometimes you want to cry on a first date. I don't know, but yeah, we'll kick it
I
over
saw
to Jen.
Tenet on my husband's and my first date,
And
and
being
they're
able to
married.
survive that movie shows the longevity of your relationship. Sorry.
I'm kidding.
All right, yeah. So kicking it over to Jess, significant other score. Do you feel like if you were to go on a date with this or watch it with your parents, etc., you think it's a good movie for one of
Yeah,
those?
I mean, saw it with my husband, and it sparked a lot of good discussion on the way home. It's like like a lot of Nolan films, I feel like you can watch it on the surface and find it very enjoyable. And then you can think about it for days and digest it for days and discuss it for years after and still be finding like new things about it. Yeah, nothing that you wouldn't feel comfortable watching with your parents. I don't think, not like Oppenheimer. I think you're good here. Um, and yeah, I mean, I cried because I'm a crier in movies when I get feel any sort of heightened emotion, really. I'll start crying. Um, but I don't think that would be a deterrent from seeing this on a first date. I think it would be a good and epic one, just like Tenet, you know.
Oh, sure. how, how would uh how would you, Harry? Where do you rank this in your significant other score?
Well, so yeah, if you do watch this on a first date, you have to be prepared because the expectations you'll be leaving after first days will be so high. You have to keep a hold to that. So yeah, if you're willing to take that risk, then yeah, go
Mm,
for it. But no, all jokes aside, I think no, definitely again, as Jessica mentioned with Oppenheimer, yeah, I feel like this is yeah more a movie because that's that one you had to like really be deeply intact, and the messaging is a bit
mm,
more connected to today. Even this one is still connected to today. It's done in a more, you know, it's a historical movie still, and I think you have that sense of you can still lay back, you can enjoy. You're watching a historical epic, and I think that's why it lends it in so well. Where you can watch it, on a first date, something like that.
And to anyone watching who did watch this on a first date, might I recommend for your second date in a couple of months, go see Dune 3. That could be another movie that will hit as hard as this one. So,
Waiting a couple months for a second date. Oh.
yeah, shows they're not desperate, they're taking their time. It's a good move.
And for your 1.5 year anniversary, you can go watch Gollum. Well,
There we go.
A full year later.
Date 3, I'm going to wait a year. We'll take a retrospective in between and then
Hey,
we'll see how
some
it
people
goes.
like to take it slow.
All right, moving on. I feel like this category, because we're dealing with Christopher Nolan, the first two are probably going to move by quickly because we know what we're getting. But the third one, we may have some discussion. So we're moving into phase two, which is the filmmaking and craft. I'm definitely biased in this category. Pretty sure Jess is in this category. So maybe Harry is the outlier here, or maybe he joins us and have the same opinion with Christopher Nolan. But we're going to start out with the visuals. And for this, I'll just say it's a good segue into one of our another initiatives. The cinematographers, Hoyt van Hoytema, who's been involved with a lot of Christopher Nolan film. And he was also involved in one of my favorite films, Her. He was a cinematographer on that, and that's a movie we're discussing in the monthly film club. So, if you're interested in watching two movies, maybe some you haven't seen before, and want to kind of broaden your horizon of your, cinematography and your blind spots into certain genres, that's what we plan on tackling, and that will be a monthly episode airing on the Fandoms channel. So, if you haven't already, like and subscribe, and we'll be doing a lot of fun stuff over there. So yeah, so visuals, Hoyt van Hoytema. We talked about the IMAX. I'll jump to Harry since he's potentially the wild card, but probably joining in on us. I'm leading the witness here. Um, what do you think of the overall visuals of this film?
Yeah, so as I know, I'm sure Shiv and Jessica know you guys are probably going to land on this, and I also agree with that. So I think maybe for me, I could play a bit of devil's advocate, but it's gonna be really hard to do that because generally it was incredible. So yeah, I'll let you guys talk about what was so amazing, and I agree, the visuals were insane. The only one thing I remember watching, I think, is it called the Skilla or the Scylla, that monster that comes with the mountain. I feel like
Oh.
sometimes using less sorry, I was about to say VAR, that's CGI. Um, Sometimes the issue of using less CGI. Yeah, I feel like that part was a little bit, I feel like yeah, he wanted to just get past that point quickly because there's only so much you could do practically. So that is, me playing, only doing this for devil's advocate. Because now I'm gonna go to you guys who are going to give the, I guess, why and agreeably show so why it is. The visuals are just stunning in this film.
Let's jump to Jess because maybe she can pronounce it correctly if that was incorrectly, and let us know.
Yeah, Skilla. I thought that part
I
was,
was right the first time.
yeah, pretty cool. I don't want to get too spoilery with it. There was a little bit of a twist involving that storyline from that just goes along with Nolan's focus on a particular theme for this that is not as present in the poem itself. But yeah, I mean, the use of locations is insane, and looks amazing. The underworld scene,
Mm.
incredible. Like that when they land on those black sand beaches. I mean, I know they're in Iceland. It's just like you look transported to another world. Um, he's so good at that. I guess, yeah, I haven't seen her, so I think after Hoyt did her, then he did started working with Nolan after that. Interstellar was his first one, and they've worked together, I think, on every movie since. He's one of the top cinematographers working today. Absolutely incredible. Everything looks amazing. The Cyclops. We won't show any spoilery pictures, but of like the puppet that they used to film a lot of that practically mixed with I think Bill Irwin was doing the performance capture. Incredible.
Tars.
Yeah, yeah, really, really awesome stuff. Can't say enough good things about it. Seeing it on the IMAX with that giant screen. Yeah, I think some people have said, like, "Oh, it's crazy. It looks like so much more dull than the behind the scenes footage that you see." But I mean, I think that's just, it's not Technicolor. It's shot on film. He's doing a particular aesthetic. I have no issues with what he was doing. I think it works for this film.
100%. Yeah. And the Skilla scene, it was interesting you mentioned that because I was curious because the lead up to this movie is mostly practical with very little CGI. And right before this stream, something popped up, a reel talking about how they did that. And it got half of the answer of what I wanted. They said that they rigged a bunch of hoists to the boats and were yanking people out of the boat, which was interesting. So they did that practically. But in terms of skill itself, it didn't touch upon that. So I'm still curious of how they handled that because it looked realistic for most of the shots. So
Yeah,
curious.
I think they did a smart thing with just the glimpses that you see, making it very like kind of unsettling, and that you don't see the whole thing, but the impression that you get is very, very creepy and monstrous. Kind of like I just finished watching Backrooms. I didn't watch like I watched that very non-linearly, I'll say, because I'm not good with scary stuff. But those like stick creature things, it almost kind of evoked that sort of like dread. But I thought it was super well done.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Now we'll move on to sound. So sound design,
Sorry,
score.
Shiv.
Oh, yep.
To interrupt. We have a €10 super chat.
Oh,
If you're able to, yeah, we get to that first. Thank you, Montalto 7864.
oh, that's awesome. Let's see if we can pull it up on the screen. Trying to figure that out in Riverside right now.
Should we read it out?
If anyone's able to see it and wants to read it out, that'd be helpful because I'm not seeing it in Riverside right now.
Jess, do you want to go for that?
Sure. So Montalto 7864 says, I'm hearing from friends who are Nolan fans that they were seriously disappointed and said it was plotting and tedious. I'm debating whether to just wait for streaming. and I did respond in chat to this as well because I didn't know if we were gonna be able to get it on screen. Do you want me to respond first?
You go first. You go
Yeah.
first.
So I couldn't disagree more with your friends, Montalto. I don't think it was plotting and tedious at all. It is kind of like Penelope's journey throughout this movie, maybe a little bit of an exercise in patience to get to the payoff at the end. But even the first two acts, as we discussed earlier, they're not slow. Maybe compared to the third one, which absolutely goes 100 miles an hour as soon as it starts. But also talking about the visuals, this is a movie that you're going to want to see on the largest screen possible to get the best experience. So I don't think if you can get into a theater, even if you can't get into something like an IMAX 70 millimeter, go see it in a theater, preferably a crowded one, so you can feel the energy from the crowd as well, which just contributes to the experience. I would say it's not like it's a rated R movie, so when I say it's like an Avengers Endgame experience, it's not that crazy. That was like a once in a lifetime. I don't think the energy of a crowd in a theater is ever gonna be like that again. But the energy of a crowded theater who's into the movie is definitely going to heighten your enjoyment of this film.
hmm And I guess the only way, I guess, of course, all things are subjective at the end of the day. And maybe if they are Nolan fans, maybe your friends specifically have really high standards of not
Mm.
cinema, of like Nolan's work. So maybe that's maybe the way they've approached that. As in, if they compare it to, I don't know, Interstellar or other ones, they, suggest as Nolan's best work. So maybe even if that is, they're just disappointed, maybe that's not a bad thing because Nolan, I think we all agree, is so much higher than the average. Something that they might find disappointed in is probably still better than 99% of things that are out in the cinemas, you know. So yeah, but thank you again for the contribution, and it's a different viewpoint, Rich, because we're all largely on the same page. It's good to have, again, the still devil's advocate, um, other viewpoints. Yeah, thank you for that.
I do think this is, as a Nolan fan, if you're already a Nolan fan, but you say that you're disappointed in this, this to me feels like a movie so in conversation with, yes, Oppenheimer, but so many of his other movies as well. Like we mentioned, Interstellar, Tenet, The Prestige, and it feels like he's taking what made those films good and interesting and themes from those films and bringing it all into one film. It feels like the culmination of his craft, not only as a filmmaker but like a writer. Um, so that's a really interesting take to hear from someone who's or your friends who are Nolan fans. I'm interested. I've heard, takes from people who are not generally Nolan fans. But yeah, that is interesting to me.
Yeah, I would say bare minimum if you're nervous, try to go see it in IMAX on one of the discount days, and it would still be worth it for you. But me, 100% going to see it biggest screen you possibly can. It'll be worth it. It'll definitely be worth
Always
it.
trust your own judgment.
Yes, that is a great point. And everything's subjective, right? So it's if you like Greek mythology, if you like Nolan, if you like action, if you like, uh, I guess like movies that have a moral compass, all those kind of culminating together make it an interesting watch. But yeah. And in the meantime, I was trying to figure out super chats, and for some reason, I cannot highlight them right now. So I'll try to figure that out later on in the stream.
Maybe Mark will know. But
Yeah,
I did put a screenshot if you just want to like flash it up or anything. But
appreciate it.
up to
Let's see
you.
if I.
Oh, we've got sound next. I'm excited for our next category.
Yes. All right. Let's see. I will try to flash that up quickly because I feel bad. I want to make sure we get full on feature here. Here we go. Best I could do for right now. Hey, it works.
Yeah. Thank you, Montalto. You should
It
comment
sounds
back
like
and
disappointment.
yeah, say if you are gonna go still see the movie. I don't think you should wait for streaming. Also, who knows when that will be? I imagine Nolan gets his choice of how long this runs in theaters.
Hmm.
It'll probably be pretty long.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. So moving on to sound. So um I will say I'm a little biased in this category, so I will definitely maybe I'll sandwich in the middle. So we'll start with Jess, go to me, then to Harry. Um, so I'll kick it off with you, Jess. So this is Ludwig. He's been a collaborator with Nolan for a little bit now. I think he started with Tenant, correct?
Mhm. Yes, he
Tenant.
did. Yep.
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 And
Uh,
all right, kick it off.
no, I've got a lot. I know that we are also probably going to come out on opposite sides of this because we've already discussed it a little. But yeah, Tenet is a soundtrack near and dear to my heart. I was obsessed with Hans Zimmer and everything that he was doing with Nolan before, he got adopted by Villeneuve, Avu, however you say his name, and Nolan found a new partner in Gronson. But the Tenet soundtrack just was so exciting. I remember when he did the Mandalorian soundtrack, everyone was like, "Oh, something different, something interesting. Like this is great." Loved that. And Tenet, I mean, Oppenheimer was incredible, incredible soundtrack as well. And this one, I think this one is really interesting because it feels so restrained throughout the movie in a way. It almost kind of fades into the background and becomes like a part of the landscape of the movie, which I feel like a good score should do. But he so effectively like creates these little like sounds and motifs that are played throughout in different circumstances that in the third act when you finally get the payoff of what this little sound insertion has been building to, it just like hits you like a truck, which I think is just I can't think of another instance of that sort of thing being done in a movie. I didn't think about it enough. I'm sure maybe it does, but that sound that you're hearing and it's just kind of a part of the movie itself and then you hear it and you react the same way that the characters within the film react in a way that's just like Wah! So I think that I can't wait to listen to the soundtrack on its own. I was just really impressed. I mean, if you watch some like making of things, Ludwig and his team recreated these ancient instruments that haven't even existed. The owlus, the lyre, like these instruments that
Uh-huh.
would have been used for telling this story in the hall. Like they would have used these ancient instruments. We don't even know what they are like anymore, but they studied historical documents in order to recreate them so he could use the sounds in this score. I mean, his craft is incredible. I think that we're probably looking at another Oscar for Ludwig Göransson for what he did here. I think, yeah, just such incredible stuff. Like it's so exciting.
Wow. All right. How do I top that?
You don't. You give the opposite take.
I'm gonna have to yield. I will say I'm a Hans Zimmer sympathizer, so I really love what Hans Zimmer's work, and I loved his collaboration with Christopher Nolan. And I feel like Interstellar is like peak collaboration for me, soundtrack wise. I can't think of many movies in recent memory that have like a very impactful soundtrack like that one has on me. However, I will say, uh, Ludwig did a very great job with the shepherd tone this time around. Like, uh, the tension building in this was absolutely insane in certain areas where you just feel like I feel like you're getting pulled away from the theater by that shepherd tone. It's just
Hey, can you
mm,
explain shepherd tone?
oh, sorry.
And
So
so you're a musician, so right, like I don't know if everyone knows that. You know a lot about music for the people that are watching. So, but I love to learn about these like terms that musicians know and what they mean and turn up as in the movie.
yeah, so shepherd tones have been used in Christopher Nolan movies. Like one that really stands out to me is in Dunkirk, but it's basically it's a almost an optical illusion, but an audio illusion because what's happening is a higher tone and a lower tone are blending together and one's ascending and one's descending. And by having that fade, it constantly feels like a note is ascending. So you just constantly feel tension and it feels like it's just building and building. But what's actually happening is it's kind of staying constant. And the best way to describe it visually is if you ever seen one of those barber shop, I don't know what you call them. They're like the spinny things. That's like a visual representation of what the audio's doing. So it's just constantly blending, so it's constantly moving, and that it's a effective tool used in cinema um, and in music to just build tension. Another area where you actually might hear a shepherd's tone, which is surprising, is actually in I guess you would call it gospel music, maybe like in religious music. They tend to use it. There's usually a bridge where um, the music just continually builds and builds and builds until it releases with like the final chorus. A lot of times, musicians implement a shepherd tone in that area as well. But yeah,
I wish we could play like an example of one on the stream because like I
Oh,
know kind of what you're talking about. I just can't think of one off the top of my head.
yeah. I'll see what I can do, but I have a feeling I'll end up breaking a bunch of things doing that. But
Oh.
if I can rope around to it, maybe we'll jump to Harry. I'll see if I can
Mhm.
find an example. So, yeah, to summarize my thoughts, I did think the soundtrack was great. Would I have liked Hans Zimmer? Who knows? It's an alternate universe, maybe, but Ludwig did a great job. Harry.
no, I think you guys have summarized it so well, and I think yeah, again, I have to agree. Ludwig, I think his work on Oppenheimer before, and of course Sinners. He's got like 3 Oscars now, hasn't he? And I think yeah, you see why. And you see why Nolan loves to work with him. And yes, there were some points I remember with the sound, there were a few jump scare moments as well. That which is not even because there's like a jump on screen; it's because the sound comes first. And I know they said people have been saying, Nolan might, experiment with horror next, and I'd be like, if so, yeah, I'm gonna be like, how Jess was earlier backroom, so I might have to like put my hand in front of my screen because I hate jump scares. And I was sat right at the back of the back row next to the projecting sound thing as well, which didn't really help. Um, but but yeah, no, I think that just again goes to show how everything is immersed correctly. The sound it and also with sound, I know we talk about music and the score, but also the sound editing and the mixing. When the swords are clanging, everything you can hear the echoes. Everything's tuned perfectly. So yeah, I guess just from not only from the score, but yeah, the actual sound mixing itself was very very good.
Awesome. And I was able to pull up an example. We'll see if this works. Um, I'm going to play this audio quickly, and this is an example of a shepherd tone. Oh, now it's buffering. Great. Great timing. Try that again. Are you kidding me? Technical difficulties. But if you can kind of hear at the beginning of that 1 second clip, you can hear that it's just constantly ascending, but it's actually doing ascension and descension at the same time.
It's
Uh,
like a foghorn siren, something like that. So it reminds me of.
yeah, that's kind of an example of it because the foghorn's kind of doing that, where it's constantly pumping air into it. So yeah, it gives it that constant feel.
Yeah, Harry reminded me of another thing about the sound, like with the sound editing and sound mixing. I know some people, like for Tenet, people complained that they couldn't hear the dialogue because of like all the sound. It was just like not understandable. Um, that was never an issue for me. I guess maybe it could depend on your theater or whatever. And I saw it in Dolby, so the sound was like pristine.
Mm.
But I don't think that's gonna be as much of an issue for this one, like, with the dialogue. I think even if the sounds are really loud, I never had an issue hearing, what people were saying. Also, the score was less bombastic maybe than
Mm.
Tenet, so maybe that's also why it's not an issue. But yeah, I don't think that'll be like a major complaint for people.
Hmm. Yeah, I
I've
agree.
maybe seen like one tweet about someone not being able to understand compared to Tenet, where that's like I feel like that's all I see is people saying they couldn't understand what was being said.
Wow. I feel like there was maybe one scene in the theater uh, when I think Travis Scott was on screen. He was kind of barding it up, and there was some dialogue going on at the same time. I had difficulty hearing that, but that could have even been intentional at that point.
The
But
opening scene.
yeah, I think it was in the beginning scene. But that was it.
Mm,
After that, like clear as day for
Yeah,
everything.
it
yeah.
was hilarious that Travis Scott was the first person we see, the first character. Yeah,
People
people.
yeah, people were pointing out that he was oh, I think Harry cut out.
Oh no, I'll just say yeah. It was actually the first person people saw, and then everyone was like, "What? Whoa, what a way to start the Odyssey!" Travis
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah, I think the credit order had leaked before I saw the movie, and Travis Scott was like first, and I was like, what kind of weird order are they doing this in? It's not alphabetical, but he is the first person to appear on screen, so that's probably
Hmm.
they're doing it by order of appearance, which is really funny.
Yeah, he would. I didn't even. I knew he was in the movie, but I was just so immersed by the story, like I
Yeah,
didn't even recognize him until way later. Same
he
with
was
Benny
great.
Safdie. Like I didn't even recognize him in the movie, but apparently
Yeah,
he was there.
well, yeah, he's we see the back of his head in the shot
Yep,
here.
definitely looked menacing too, and yeah, did a good job.
Yeah, the
All right.
choice. Well, I don't. I keep wanting to talk about things,
Yeah,
and it's like we've got our categories, and this is not relevant to the category. So,
we'll try to we'll pick up the pace so we can jump into spoilery territory soon. So we only have a couple more. This one I did have some thoughts in. So authenticity is how authentic do you feel the performances and dialogue were, and did the actors embody the characters or just read lines? So maybe to shake things up, I'll start with Harry on this one. How did you feel the acting went in this movie? The authenticity? Were there times where you're pulled out of the story, or did you feel like you were just buying everything on screen?
No, I think the acting was very good. I have seen a little bit about Tom Holland. Everyone saying, everyone was, acting him, but I did think he had very good performance. 'Cause that's what his character is. He's not at the might of his father, but he's still learning. He's still having, to grow around him and become that prince. Um, and I think despite what people have said, I thought Tom Holland was good. I think, yeah, I think the thing with having an all-star cast though is like because every single actor is someone you know. So that's the only thing that takes me out of it sometimes with Nolan films. But at the end of the day, the reason that is because they're all such terrific actors. He doesn't like just cast anybody. So then that's like only like the small downside of having such a terrific cast. So yeah, that didn't even really matter in the end. And yeah, no, I thought the performances were very good. Matt Damon. I know people often say, Matt Damon's just playing Matt Damon, and a lot of the movies I do watch Matt Damon in, it just feel like that. But this one, no, it didn't feel like this was Odysseus. It wasn't, Matt Damon playing a warrior. Um,
Hmm,
So yeah, I thought that was very good. We didn't see much of Zendaya, but the twist
hmm.
of her was very, very cool, and I think that did add a lot. And yeah, overall, I think I was very, very satisfied. I think it was very, very good, and of course, Anne Hathaway, I think, was one of the standouts as well. So yeah, I'm sure I'll let you guys get along with the other ones as well.
All right, Jess, do you echo any of those thoughts? Do you have any? Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone gave incredible performances. I think, yeah, I think Tom Holland really brought it. Like, I always think that he's pretty exceptional in everything he does, and just thus far in his career, he hasn't had very good projects outside of like Spider-Man. But he even in Spider-Man, I mean, if you think of the first Spider-Man movie where he has that scene where the building has fallen on him and he's like, "Come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man." Like, I know everyone watched that and, like, felt that emotion. So, I think I'm really, really excited for to see what he does after this, having worked with Nolan. I think he brought exactly what that character needed, which is, a sort of, like, boyishness. He's probably supposed to be about 20 or 21, and I think he carries that really well, like a boy who grew up without his father, who's on the cusp of becoming a man, doesn't quite know what that means yet. He hasn't had his father to kind of teach him that. Um, Anne Hathaway, incredible. Wouldn't be surprised to see her get nominated for an Oscar here. I thought she really brought a lot of nuance to this character, and I think her focus was really on, her Penelope's faithfulness, which is, I think, a huge theme in the Odyssey. Robert Pattinson is a gem. I've liked everything he's ever done. I was a Twilight lover back in the day, but watched everything else that he did because I was like, I think this guy's actually good. So I've always been a believer. Couple standouts for me: Samantha Morton as Circe. Little screen time, big impact. I mean, I love that character. I think that she did so well. I think that Christopher Nolan is a big must be a big fan of Madeline Miller, who's an author who did a contemporary kind of retelling, not contemporary, but like a fictionalized account of Circe, and character study. And I think that a lot of the characterization that Samantha Morton brought really felt like it was derived from that retelling. Uh, and also Elliot Page as Sinon also was outstanding. Really, really impactful character with the little screen time, and that's I think a really interesting adaptational change that Christopher Nolan made to have that character featured in the underworld scene, um, instead of Achilles, which we can get into later. But yeah, those are my two standouts that we haven't mentioned. But really, everyone was amazing. Himesh Patel, I was so excited that he had so much screen time. Wasn't featured in marketing that much, but I thought, yeah, everyone was really amazing.
Hmm. I'm glad you mentioned Himesh Patel because I loved him in Station 11
Station
and
11, yeah,
seen him come. Yeah, that was great. And you mentioned Samantha Morton, and I read that the crew gave her a standing ovation during her
yeah,
first performance. So yeah, that's
yeah. That was another scene where it's like, oh, Nolan could do something horror uh, now. Like this was a very haunting and crazy, um, crazy scene. I just saw something in the chat.
and on that note too, for that scene specifically, I feel like he was tapping into some of the lessons he learned from the Prestige with illusions and I guess you'd say like the craft of practical effects. Because yeah, that was some intense stuff in there. Yeah. All right. So The only other thing I can add to authenticity is kind of echoing something Harry said a little bit ago is the star power can sometimes take away, but like the performances were amazing. So it's kind of like it's almost like a personal problem. It's like, oh, I'm looking at Matt Damon on the screen. It's like, Stop it, brain. Stop saying that. That's Matt Damon. That's Odysseus." Um, so I had a bit of that just randomly throughout the movie, but overall, like Harry said, like definitely was earned. That was Odysseus on screen. It was very intense and yeah.
Yeah, another thing I forgot that we said we would talk about this here with Travis Scott and like the dialogue of the film being in this kind of English or American accents and more
Mm,
modern tone aligned with Emily Wilson's translation. I think that she's got a translator's note that talks about that Homeric poems, like they're transmitted orally, they undergo periods of change and adaptation and reperformance to suit changing contemporary tastes. That's always been the case. And I think that, you know, changing the language slightly to be more modern, that's just what adaptation of epic poetry has done throughout history. So, you know, if you read Chapman's translation of Homer from the 1600s that has this very like antiquated, elevated prose style or poetic style is totally different from reading, you know, Fitzgerald's translation from last like late last century versus Emily Wilson's now. Like this is just what happens. Translations undergo those adaptational changes to suit contemporary taste. That's always been the case. I think that he pulled it off here as well. Like maybe the first 10 minutes or so, like you got to sit into it. But then it doesn't really blip uh blip the radar. You kind of get used to it and settle into the rhythm of the dialogue in the poem.
hmm. Yeah, and it makes great stories more accessible to more people by doing retellings like that. Like I'm sure if I were to read even William Shakespeare now, I'd probably have no idea what he's saying. So it's nice to always have some adaptations every once in a while. But yeah. All right, we got a couple more categories to go and I know we want to get to spoilers, so we might have to jump into speed rounds to some fashion. So we're still in the spoiler free territory and we'll put up the warning shortly, but story and emotional resonance. We slowly touched upon this throughout our conversation so far, so I think we can probably move in some cases to some brief reactions here. But for the first one, we have focus, which we kind of covered already with the ride. But do you feel like in this adaptation there was a sharp narrative focus, or did it get bogged down by subplots throughout? Did you feel like you had cohesion, or were there any confusion points? And I guess a frame of reference for me with shaping this question is every time House of the Dragon comes back on and we cover it, I get there's like a period of me being confused and having to reorient myself because there's so many characters, so many storylines, so many storylines that pop in and out. So, um, do you feel like there was any of that going on, or was this a clear journey that was easy to follow? And we'll start with Harry to start.
No, yeah, I think of course there were flashbacks at the start, and Nolan often that it's not always linear at the start, and that's what I've noticed. So yeah, the first act is always, in different areas, but that doesn't mean the focus is bad. That means that, still direct. We know the story is flowing. We know that we need to see the backstory of Odysseus. We need to see the journey, etc., etc. But then yeah, I think the focus, I think it was perfect getting on because it became Odysseus' story for a lot of it as well, and we saw it from his point of view, which was very very important because that's what allows for the payoff. And that's what almost felt like in a way that, yeah, it's like we're seeing all the backstories at the start for the first act. Second act is Odysseus' journey. Third act, we get reintroduced to most of the characters from the first act again. And and I think that's a good way to do it because it's the Odyssey, he is Odysseus' journey, you know, to get back home. And yeah, I think it is I think the focus, yeah, I was really happy with it, and I guess in some way focus can link to pacing, but yeah,
Mm,
I was very happy.
awesome. I think what we'll do to for time here, we'll skip to emotion and I'll go straight to Jess. Because you made a point earlier about being moved a couple times in the theater. So I'll frame this in an interesting way, and I'll see your take on it. But to start, do you feel like this movie had a larger emotional impact on you versus Interstellar? Or is there another Nolan film that hits you harder than The Odyssey?
Oof, that's tough. I feel like actually thinking about it, I think it did because part of what like hits so hard about Interstellar is, and this is a story that Nolan is now like putting in a new form. This idea of like trying to save the world, but in the cost of that is losing time with the people that you love. So there's a trade off there. And I feel like here that becomes even more devastating because this story revolves around Odysseus's guilt over the breaking of Zeus's law or Xenia, which is like the major theme that Nolan chooses to focus on here, and which is a major theme from the original Greek poem. And so by breaking Zeus's law, which he does by telling this monstrous lie, which I feel like this is tying back to Interstellar as well, like the monstrous lie that Dr. Brand has to tell in order to get them to actually go on this quest. They can't save the people on Earth. They have to like look elsewhere. And here, the monstrous lie is like this offering of this horse is a gift that they're giving, but it turns out that this horse is not actually a gift, it's their destruction. And Odysseus is complicit in that lie. He's the architect of that lie. He's the architect of the destruction of Troy and the destruction ultimately of the world. And that's the major thesis of that Nolan's trying to get across is that like when you break Xenia, when you like lose out on this kindness to strangers or this like looking out for the well-being of these other people, it causes the breakdown of civilization. And I think that's so powerful. And this movie revolves around Odysseus like trying to deal with that guilt that he has over what he does, and it comes to like this amazing conclusion in the third act, which I won't spoil, but when you get that reveal, it just like recontextualizes the whole movie. It's so powerful, and I think that Sinon is another character that plays into that. There's some going on in the live chat, and Sinon, I think it's kind of controversial that this scene in the underworld, where in the poem Odysseus is talking to Achilles, but what he's talking to Achilles about in the poem is about legacy and honor, and Achilles was so desperate for that in life, and now he's talking about how it's worthless in the underworld after death. Like he doesn't get to enjoy it, and I don't think that contributes to what Nolan is trying to tell in this film, which is about um, Odysseus's guilt over making Sinon, an innocent who was never like meant to go to war, complicit in this monstrous lie that ends up causing the destruction of the world. And Odysseus has to wrestle with that for the entirety of the movie until he can finally like let that go, and then he can make the journey home. And yeah, just getting chills thinking about this. Like I need to sit with this even more to like fully develop these thoughts. But yeah, the I don't want to jump back to a different category, but I so appreciate that about this film because Nolan is so dialed in on the Xenia, which is so pivotal and central to the poem. Like he just gets it in an extraordinary way. And like everything, like the scenes that he left out, stuff about the Phaeacians, it's not central to the idea that Odysseus is feeling guilt over the fact that he broke Xenia in order to bring about the fall of Troy, which leads to all this stuff. Like he has to look at the destruction that he architected over the world. And I think that's incredible. So
And I
yeah,
think you
that
slipped
was not
into
brief.
and you slipped into the other category, so that works perfectly. We feel like the majority of the adaptation conversations will probably be in the spoiler territory. So what we'll do is we'll move on for time here and jump to this later. So the final categories in the non-spoiler areas are reflection and big picture. So I think, well, I'm gonna say I think those go by quickly, but we'll see what happens. This first category I like to call cinema blind spots. So um, the purpose of this category, we hope to use this as we cover other materials. Like, so we're from Fellowship of Fans, and we have the Lord of the Rings backgrounds, Tolkien, and all that. So fantasy. Myth and Greek mythology is kind of pretty closely related to that genre. So in this case, for what we call cinema blind spot, it might be we would rank ourselves on the lower scale of this because we have a direct relationship with fantasy. So if I was to pose the question quickly, it's just did this film push you outside of your comfort zone? And I think the answer for all of us is no, it did not, because we are all nerds in the fantasy realm. So, um, as we discussed earlier, um, this appeals to general audiences. So you don't have to be a big nerd. You don't have to know the ins and outs of Greek mythology to appreciate this film. So we'll probably leave this category as that and move on to rewatchability. Um, and this is where I'm biased again because it's Christopher Nolan. So I'll kick it over to Jess. With rewatchability, could you watch this movie over and over again, or is this a one and done?
Yeah, I could watch this movie so many times. I mean, even just like talking about that stuff, I was like, I need to like sit with it even more. I need to watch it again. And now knowing how it ends and how the third act kind of recontextualizes the whole film, like I need to go back and see it from the beginning. I need to, now that I'm like thinking about it in conversation with his other work, like I need to just like really get to sit with it and watch it over and over. I mean, I feel like this is just going to reward repeated viewings, in a way that I love when you get more out of watching it multiple times and there's something new that you can appreciate each time. So yeah, I've been I've been in the Nolan fanboy club since the days of the Prestige when I was a teenager probably. So yeah, this is a good one.
Couldn't have said it any better. And with Christopher Nolan films, I feel like you can always revisit them and find new things, hidden details, and stuff like that. And what I try to do with watching, um, I try to my first pass on any of his movies is just sitting there and enjoying it, not trying to read into anything, trying to avoid spoilers ahead of time. So on this first pass, I was just there for the ride. I probably didn't retain a lot, as you can imagine. I still don't know half the characters' names, unfortunately, but we'll get into that in a second where you'll be able to educate me. Um, but overall, yeah, this first pass for me was just all right. Take the wheel, Christopher Nolan, and let me enjoy this thing. So I look forward to my next rewatch, which I might attempt to find a 70 millimeter showing. And if not, I'm going to probably go see it in IMAX yet again. And my second type of viewing would be a Dolby theater, which are still great. So if you can't find an IMAX, I would say Dolby's next for me. uh, yeah, so rewatchability. I'm probably gonna see it 1 or 2 more times in theater. It's one of those, so, I think in the super chat earlier, should you go see it? It's definitely up to your taste, but, I feel like you might have FOMO if you don't check it out on a big format. If I didn't see Interstellar when it came out on IMAX, I would still be devastated by that. And Tenet, I did see Tenet in IMAX.
Hmm.
And Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer. Yep, yep, yep. All right.
I think, gosh, I know we've got like so much to cover. Maybe at some point we could address. There's some chatter in the chat. I think is really interesting. I appreciate uh, Mathej and Javier. They've got some interesting comments. Maybe we can come back to them. Yeah, I think I I get like people not liking. So Achilles is not featured very much in the Odyssey. The only place he is featured in the poem is in the underworld scene. And here in this movie, Nolan replaces that scene with him talking to Sinon, which I get why we don't like not having Achilles. I think for what Nolan is doing, really focusing in on this idea of Odysseus's guilt as a result of breaking Zeus's law or Xenia, it makes sense to me to replace this with Sinon, who historically, or in the tradition, not in the Odyssey, because Sinon doesn't really appear there, but in the Aeneid, this story of how Sinon was responsible for lying to the Trojans to get them to bring the horse into Troy. Here, that blame, which in the Aeneid is put on Sinon for lying, instead, it's accurately shifted to Odysseus, whose idea it was in the first place. And Sinon does not know that the Greeks are in the horse, and he is responsible for the lie that makes them bring the horse in, but he doesn't know that they're there. And I think that it's really powerful to show that Odysseus is wrestling with this guilt by having him confronted by Sinon, and faced with the wrongdoing and the breaking of Zeus's law that he's responsible for. As cool as it would be to have Achilles here, I don't think that the discussion that Odysseus has with Achilles about legacy really fits Nolan's central thesis. So I get why that's changed to great, in my opinion, to great effect here if we're trying to really focus. I don't think that this is making the Odyssey not work, by excluding Achilles, because Achilles does not really add anything to this central thesis that Nolan is working with. And that's just for this adaptation. Like, that's why I think that this is not an issue. And yeah, he really had to cut down. Like, other criticism has been the exclusion of the Phaeacians and the whole Alcinous and Nausicaa storyline, which I think is great, but there's nothing there about that. Like, Odysseus isn't doing anything there to violate Xenia. Actually, he's a very good guest, and the Phaeacians are very good hosts. So it's not contributing to the idea that this is like every other time Odysseus lands on an island, he's breaking Zeus's law. He invades the Cyclops home and like starts eating his food, and then Cyclops breaks it back by killing his men. And then with Circe, she's like had Xenia broken against her by other invading men, so she breaks it first by, you know, cursing the men. And then with the Lystragonians, the same thing. That's the sequence I think maybe, if anything, he could have cut, but it was very cool and filmed practically, I might add, with very tall people, and some camera tricks, which is crazy because they were so big. But that's that all of those landings on different islands are contributing to the central theme of over and over, like Xenia's being broken. Odysseus is breaking it. The other people are breaking it back. And that idea that when Xenia is broken, that's when, you know, society starts breaking down, these violations. And they all go back to what originally started the Trojan War in the first place. Paris breaks Xenia by stealing Helen away from Menelaus and starting the Trojan War in the first place. And then ends the Trojan War is ended by Odysseus breaking Xenia back, by invading with this gift. So I think it's a really powerful shifting, also by, you know, putting this on Odysseus and focusing on the man, which, might I add, is the first word of the poem, the man, who had many twists and turns and was very complicated. So yeah, I get, I wish we could have a 6-hour adaptation of the Odyssey that includes everything. But Nolan had to really focus on one central theme, and he focused in on Xenia and the breaking of it and how that contributes to the fall of Troy and civilization. And I think that anything that wasn't immediately contributing to that had to go. So I get it, but not an issue for me.
Maybe Nolan has a thing against people with weak ankles, and that's why he didn't have them.
Yeah,
Yes.
that too.
Um, all right. Let's see here. I think we're basically tiptoeing into spoiler territory. So the last question I can possibly ask before we're in that realm is the legacy of this film. I think a fun way to do this, because we are talking about Christopher Nolan. Oh, this is a dangerous question. Where does this movie rank currently in your mind for the Nolan films? And I'll word it like that because I feel like after rewatching, things might shift. So, right now in your mind, where does this fall?
Honestly, I went and immediately added this to my top 4 on Letterboxd,
Mm,
which, previously I would have said that Interstellar was my favorite of Nolan's films, although I don't necessarily think it's his best. Um, but I think that the way that this film brings together the best of his craft that he's like showed in all the other movies, the best of the best of his storytelling. I think it's really like exemplified in this movie. And it's just like so ambitious. Um to I mean, no one's done like the Odyssey. They did Troy, which whatever, we won't get into that. Um but to do the Odyssey, like it hasn't really been done before. And I think it makes so much sense when you look at the last few movies he's done. But yeah, I think this immediately leaps to the top of my favorite Nolan films, favorite films of all time, best of the year, which people are just going to be like, oh, you're just like a Nolan fanboy. And it's like, well, yeah, I am. But also, I'm a classicist. I studied Latin and Greek. Like have a degree in classics. I've translated much of the Odyssey from the Greek. I have about 7 different translations on my shelf behind me. Um, so I'm not just a Nolan fanboy. I would say like I'm a fan of the poem in all of its forms, and I can appreciate different adaptations and translations. And I think that this one was super successful.
wow. So you're coming with receipts, it sounds like.
A few.
Wow. All right. So in summary, you think that this is top Nolan? This is number one on your list?
Yeah, I think so. It brings
Oh.
together like so many different things that I love. I would have said like I love space movies too. Interstellar, Arrival was on my Project Hail Mary. Like these are movies that I really, really, really like. But to combine Christopher Nolan with Greek mythology and the classics, yeah, this was. I mean, I think when this was announced, I was like, oh, he's making this specifically for me.
That's fair. And a fun fact related to Tolkien and the Odyssey is I think there was like there was some kind of anniversary magazine that popped up for the Lord of the Rings, and there was a small quote in there from Tolkien basically saying, talking about adaptations and converting his stories into film. And he said, like, people would have a better chance of adapting the Odyssey, and I think he was kind of saying that in jest a little bit. And Nolan's like, "Hold my IMAX camera." So it's interesting. I'll try to find that quote later, put it in the group chat. But yeah, so for me, for top 10 or where I rank this for right now, I still have Interstellar on the top, but there's a chance in future viewings I am gonna reshift things around. I had to deal with someone in my row going to the bathroom like multiple times throughout the movie, and I was getting annoyed. He was tripping over my big popcorn horse bucket. So I was like, I was taken out of the movie a couple times, but I want to rewatch it, see where it sits, because same thing. When I came out of the theater watching Interstellar, my mind was like blown. I was confused at parts. It took me multiple viewings to fully grasp it. So this could be a similar thing for me, and I'm sure I'm going to dive into Greek mythology after talking to you more about this. So yeah,
I'd love to talk more about it. I know we're limited by stream, but yeah, I need to see it a couple more times. I'm probably not gonna be able to see it again until after San Diego Comic-Con. So I'm sit with it for another week. Uh, but yeah, I think it's really interesting to see takes like if there's a lot of like, you know, people talking about the historical accuracy or historicity of it. But then, I shared a link in the chat to a variety piece with that includes like a handful of historians who loved it. Like, so I think there's going to be a wide array of people like of opinions across the board about this one. And I think a lot of those might be based on some bad faith criticisms, not the ones in the chat. I was very interested to discuss like what people are saying. Um, but yeah, got
my
into a
favorite
discussion with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
my favorite meme was the one where it was just like Christopher Nolan isn't having accurate costumes, and it's just this really cheesy looking thing. It's like, well, that's why you
Yeah,
don't hire Christopher Nolan to make a beautiful movie.
that's literally what I was discussing with someone yesterday on Twitter about Agamemnon's armor. Uh, so yeah, costumes didn't take me out of it. I think that they're all saying something, especially looking back now at some of the criticism of how Athena looked in some of the promo shots. And then now with having seen the movie and seeing that pay off, yes. Why does she look so plain? She doesn't look like a goddess.
Hmm.
Watch the movie.
Watch the movie indeed. Yeah, yeah, I feel like there's a time and a place for historical accuracy, and with a Christopher Nolan film, you're not I guess Dunkirk kind of he wouldn't strive for accuracy there, but he's more of like a story, and he has a vision and a thematic kind of moral underpinning in his movies. So, and a style. Like he has a certain
Yeah.
style to his films. Like, yeah. So I personally, I rather it look cool than look historically accurate. Where like it looked like some of the guys were wearing like almost like hay bales back in the day. Like I don't think that would look interesting to me.
Yeah, if they're yeah, some of the people like this is what an accurate Trojan costume would look like, and it's like a barrel looking thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's why Nolan is the filmmaker and not you.
Yeah.
But again, I would point to uh, the idea that Emily Wilson brings forward, which is true, and it's not just like Emily Wilson saying this, that the Homeric poems were changed and adapted over years and years and reperformances and reformulations to suit changing contemporary tastes. That has always happened. That is always going to happen. That is happening here. And even Homer, whether it's not one person, but he was, you know, consolidating an oral tradition that had existed for like thousands of years before whenever he was living. So it wasn't even like, and might I add, this poem includes gods and monsters. Like, we're not looking at, hard history here. It is fiction based in a historical time that has been, transformed over and over and will continue to be. And I think that we can appreciate different adaptations at
Hmm.
different times and appreciate that those adaptations will be focused on and saying different things. It's not like Christopher Nolan is like, this is the definitive adaptation of Forever. It's like, this is Christopher Nolan doing Christopher Nolan things and talking about, you know, lamenting the world that he has to leave to his children, or like whatever contribution that he had towards the fall of, or this continued kind of desecration of civilization. And like, just, yeah, this is just Christopher Nolan telling the story that he told in Interstellar, in Oppenheimer, and then reformulating it for the Odyssey. Like, I just, yeah, I need to sit with this one even more to think about it, but it's going to
And
stick with me forever.
and the sad reality is too, like if people are upset by some of the choices, I'm sure there'll be another Odyssey adaptation at some point in our lifetime. Because even in this short amount of time, we've had the Troy movie. I'm sure there's other like lower budget movies that were released as well. Like it's gonna there's this is probably gonna create some kind of show spin-off. Some like someone's like, oh, you know what, this should be a series, and then it'll be pitched and whatever. So I'm sure there'll be
Didn't we,
more.
yeah, didn't we already see that someone announced that they're gonna do like a freaking AI of the Odyssey like film now after Thursday, after this movie came out on Thursday? It's like, yeah, that's, yeah, okay. So maybe you should watch the movie about the downfall of civilization. Is Nolan cooked? Someone in the chat said, is Nolan cooked? The Odyssey proceeds to make hundreds of millions of dollars. I think
More
he's fine.
like he cooked.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say too, another comment earlier was if it weren't for the cinematography and action set pieces, I would place it at a lower rank. I will say that thought bounced around in my mind in the theater, and that's one of the reasons why I want to do some rewatches to see if it holds on its own. Because I will say the action sequences were insane, and experiencing them, like they were very well crafted. And I am nervous, like, will that impact my future viewings of like, oh, now I know what happens, and but I'm hoping the messages of the movie continue to be strong and yeah.
I have to disagree with you, Javier. The best adaptation of the Odyssey is the Wishbone one.
1997 with I don't even think I've seen that one.
I haven't
1990s.
either. I'm familiar, like I know what it looks like, and I've heard like different things about it. But also a joke. I do love the Wishbone episode of uh, the Wishbone Odyssey episode from. Did you ever watch Wishbone? Do you know what I'm talking
Is that
about?
like a dog?
Yeah, it's like the PBS show where the dog like acts out all the different like stories, like
You
literary
just unlocked a
stories.
core memory. I totally
Yeah.
forgot about that show.
Let me see if I can find like a picture.
Oh, I found yeah, all right. Here we go.
Homer, Sweet Homer is the episode title. Oh, he's kind of dressed like Robin Hood. Oh, wait, maybe that is the Robin Hood episode. Gosh, that dog was cute. Anybody else in the chat know what I'm talking about with Wishbone?
I'll pop it up in the I'm gonna have to do it in a lazy way, but here we go.
What's the
It's,
story, Wishbone? Yeah.
I like totally forgot about this until you mentioned it, but yeah, they
There's
used
a
to show
part
this
where,
at our school.
where the dog like draws back the arrow,
Oh
lets
my
it go
god.
at the end. So good. Which that scene, I mean, in this movie is, I
Hmm.
wish someone I need to see it again. I need someone to like post it illegally online so I can screen record it and watch it. Sherlock Holmes Wishbone, yeah. Oh, Javier. I mean, it's old. It's like I don't know, maybe this is a US thing. It was one of those like after school, like Arthur and Magic School Bus and Wishbone. Um, like children's programming back in the day used to be pretty educational. So Magic School Bus, you're learning all about like science and stuff, and then Wishbone, you learn all about literature, um, but in like a childlike way. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes Wishbone. There's another really good one, The Time Machine, Wishbone. That was a favorite. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
okay. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the talking dog. Man, they don't make them like that anymore.
Wow. Now
So
that's a tangent.
yeah. So did we get through everything
Yeah,
without spoilers?
I think so. For there was some close calls, but I think we did it. So we can now get into the meat of things
Your
with the
your thing says no spoilers section.
uh,
Now it's
oh boy, let's confuse everyone.
spoilers be spoilers
Snape kills
beware.
Dumbledore. Oh, here we go. All right. So yes, with the spoiler discussion now, I had a couple of prepared questions, but I figured this is where Jess will probably take the wheel and just start educating. Uh, but to start, I'll start with this one, I guess. What were the major? We kind of talked about this, but now we can kind of go into spoiler territory. What major similarities or yeah, I guess similarities works. Did you see between this movie, The Odyssey, and any other Nolan films with like specific examples if you can pull them together?
Yeah, yeah, I think oh, were you gonna start?
I could start if you want to think some more
No,
or
you go ahead. Yeah, I've been yapping a lot.
so going through this, I did feel like there was a similar moral compass to Oppenheimer, and I started to like do a thought process on like why did this feel very similar, and then I mean this is probably like what is it called? Like it's a bias where you're looking for things and you're just finding whatever that makes sense. So in my case, though, like the
Confirmation bias.
confirmation bias, there we go. Um, I feel like the Trojan horse and the atomic bomb are very similar. So
Mhm.
you have in Oppenheimer's case, it was creating a new technology that basically once it was created, it can't be undone, which has rippling effects into the future of our civilization. And the Trojan horse in this case, the way Nolan framed it was it's a rippling effect of like violence and vengeance and breaking Xena, and I found that kind of interesting. And one of the building blocks of all the Nolan creations prior to this movie is like, okay, that's checking that off the box with Oppenheimer. Um, there was also a similar. I'm kind of on the Oppenheimer run right now. The fall of Troy celebration with the final speech of Oppenheimer celebration, if you will. It's a similar parallel where Oppenheimer sees the weight of what he did and the repercussions it's going to have while everyone else around him celebrating. And it was a similar thing at the tail end of this movie with Odysseus seeing the rippling effects of the decisions he made. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Uh,
totally. Totally. Like that scene um is like a mirror to this. There's like the scene where Odysseus is in Troy and he sees everything burning and like looking out over the result of like the destruction that he's brought on the world. Totally, it's a mirror to that scene of Oppenheimer, just like looking out at the applauding people and their faces start to like melt. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, that's definitely, it's so interesting to see this movie in conversation with that one, like the closest film that he's made, thematically, I think. But yeah, it really touches a lot of his different films, and their themes. Like, man, it's really, yeah, two men, both like bringing about the end of a war, but at what cost? And the cost is like their humanity and like what, like the idea that they were good at all, I guess. They both, yeah, they both just have to like, really, the movie of, or Oppenheimer kind of ends with that, like Oppenheimer looking at the consequences of his actions. But the Odyssey, we're watching Odysseus do that throughout the whole movie. And that's what that movie is about. And that's why I feel like this movie elevates that for me, like that theme that Oppenheimer was about, because that's, he has to reckon with that for 10 years and he can't go home until he can come to terms with it. Um, wow. I mean,
Yeah. And we mentioned in the stream a little bit earlier, the Prestige with the practical effects and illusions. Interstellar, I believe you made some connections there. So it does seem like a lot of his stories have similar aspects to them that he kind of has a through line throughout. Uh, there was another interesting thing doing my research before the stream that was wondering your thoughts on, because like I said, I have no background in Greek mythology, barely paid attention in history class, but one of the themes I took away from Christopher Nolan's film was PTSD and
mm,
the effects of war on men. And from that, I was seeing I kind of made a connection and then confirmation biased it probably through research. The different stages of the journey are different stages of PTSD. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Where like the fall of Troy's, the initial shock, the cause of the PTSD basically. From there you get the Cyclops that has to do with paranoia, and from there you get Cersei's Island, which is disassociation and regression,
mm,
um, and then the underworld's confrontation and dealing with your memories and your experience with the initial shock and impact. From there, you get Calypso's Island, which is the emotional numbness and avoidance. And then the return to Ithaca is reintegration and reconnection. And I was like, I don't know if he did that intentionally or if I'm just going crazy, but I was like, oh, that. So did you kind of have that takeaway? And is that related to the original source material?
yeah, I had seen a little bit about the film kind of reflecting that, and that's really, I didn't know like the different stages. I don't think that this is like reflected from the original poem, because I think our understanding of PTSD is like totally only come about in the last like 100 years, whereas before it was just like, oh, just shove it down and like be
The
insane
healthy
from all
way.
this repressed trauma. But for Nolan to deal with that, it totally tracks for me. I mean, so many of his movies are about homecoming and can we come home? And I mean, Dunkirk is like straight up just like soldiers like can, like trying to, return home from war or whatever. Dunkirk is the only of his movies that I don't really care for, because I don't like war movies. Not that it's not a great
Uh,
movie, but I've only seen it the once. But that my understanding would be that, of course, this movie is also about like these soldiers trying to return home and can they? And yeah, I have no doubt that that was like in his mind as he was doing, like creating this movie, because the movie itself is structured in that way. I don't think the structure would like work its way back into the poem, because the poem itself is not like so clean cut with these.
Mm.
There's a lot of other stuff, obviously, that's not central to Nolan's thesis that is left out. But for the poem, I think that that works super well. So it was Troy, Cyclops, Circe, Underworld, home. Oh,
Calypso.
Calypso,
Yep.
home. Okay, yeah, that makes sense with how the film is laid out because
Hmm.
yeah, Circe is pretty much like I think the halfway point,
Yeah. Just
um,
about. Yep.
which I feel like is when the movie really kicks it into gear. I feel like that was, yeah, not the start of the third act, which is when the movie really goes crazy style. But yeah, I like that a
Oh,
lot. I think, yeah, um, I think I've probably mentioned it before, but I just it feels like Nolan has been telling like a similar story over and over in each of his movies, but just getting kind of increasingly like depressed about it, which I'm smiling, but like it's not happy. I mean, for good reason, like as you know, the world that we live in is crazy and it seems like it keeps getting worse. And the world uh, that he's leaving to his children, he's constantly thinking about that and reckoning with that. And can, which this feels very Tolkienian too, like, can the world ever go back to the way it was? Can we save it at the cost of ourselves? Is it possible? I'd be interested to see what he does next based on this sort of trajectory we're seeing from him and his filmography.
Speaking of that, when I left the theater, my immediate thought, which is probably never going to happen, but would be amazing, is if he got a hand in doing anything in Middle Earth, like we saw glimpses in this film of what he could do, and just seeing that just
Yeah.
made me like, please, someone make that connection. Let him do it. Anything. Like I would be happy with if you took a small, I know the rights issue, but they're talking about it, but even one of the stories in the Silmarillion, like I could see it watching this movie. I could see him being able to pull it off. And yeah, I don't
Is
know.
he with WB still, or is he? Where's he now? I know there.
I
I can't remember
I know he has his own
who's.
company, Syncopy, but
Yeah, but he's kind of like he was with someone, and then they kind of like burned the bridge, and then he went to someone else, and he's been doing his movies with like another studio recently.
I'll go to the website because
I was gonna
I
say
want to
if he
say
is. I think he used to be with WB, and now he's not because Zaslav like did something. Probably, I don't know. But if he was still with WB, then that would be more likely that that could possibly happen, seeing as they have movie rights.
all right, man, it's taking forever. It is Universal.
Now he's with the universe. Did he used to be with WB?
I'll do Interstellar. Let's see. I think you're right
Yeah,
though.
I think Homecoming is also like while I've said from my thoughts
Yep.
on this stream that I feel like Nolan is really zeroing in on Xenia and this idea of like hospitality and guest rights and strangers and breaking that kind of social contract kind of breaks down the world. I feel like homecoming or nostos in Greek is also like such a central theme in the Odyssey poem itself. And it's definitely present in this movie, but also in like his previous filmography, Interstellar, Dunkirk, uh, kind of, I guess,
Hmm.
Tenet, you could say to an extent. But yeah, another interesting thing is I feel like I mentioned that Tenet, Oppenheimer, and the Odyssey are almost kind of a trilogy in reverse about breaking the world and like the world having to deal with the consequences of that. And in Tenet, which I know you don't like, but now we're the only two people here,
Oh
so we
no.
can talk about Tenet. It's just like the future world has seen what the past world has done and the destruction wrought by them. So the future is trying to destroy the past so that they can't break the world in the same way that the future has already experienced. And then in Oppenheimer, we're seeing like that play out in the present, and then the Odyssey, that's kind of playing out in the past. So it's really interesting, like just non-linear. These three movies I feel like are the most that Nolan kind of deals with, like non-linear storytelling and the way that they work together also in a non-linear way, I find very fascinating, and I also need to think about more. But I feel like the threads between those three are so so interesting to me. I'm gonna have to, yeah, sit with that.
That's an interesting thought experiment. We'll have to see if we find some echoes in Reddit or something, and if this trilogy theories
Holds
catching
water.
fire. Yeah, holds water. Wow. I had one other question prepared, and that was regarding Penelope.
Mm,
How did you feel her character was portrayed in this film? Because from what I could gather, which is barely any knowledge, is um, in the poems or in the stories, they depict her more as kind of like weeping and like less involved than what we get in this film, which is being more of like a politician and the intelligence of what she's doing and kind of chess playing the suitors. um and not to undercut her in the story, because I believe she did have the tactic of stalling with the is it tapestry or what.
mhm, mhm.
So that is there, but what was your take on that,
Yeah,
comparing the two?
I don't think that her being weepy is present in the poem itself at all. The Penelope of the Odyssey poem is characterized by, yes,
Hmm.
her like steadfastness and faithfulness, but ultimately like her caution. So she's very like, she plays it very close to the chest, and she is not like making moves, which I think is reflected in this. Like she waits, like she's patient Penelope, she's prudent Penelope, she's cautious Penelope, steadfast Penelope. Like she is characterized by all those things, like this kind of limbo of waiting, which I mean, what can she do in this situation but delay the like suitors overtaking or committing to another marriage. I think that this really interesting in the poem. I think here Nolan really kind of elevates that, because I don't think you get to see her interiority in the poem in the same way that you get to see it here. She is, yes, she's waiting, she's patient. It's been 20 years, but also she wants her husband, and
Hmm.
she knows the tightrope that she's walking. She has to keep the suitors satisfied with her excuses for why she's not choosing one of them, because at any point, they've already broken Xenia, they're invading her house, and she has to keep them from invading back to her bedroom, so to speak. Like she still has to hold them off. And it's a tightrope. Like it's definitely some deft maneuvering that she has to do to keep them for 20 years. She has to keep them. And she does. And she is like overly cautious in a way that I don't think they show here. Because when Odysseus returns in the poem, she does not immediately greet him. She has a test. It's a different test than the one with like the pin that they do in the movie. It
Mm.
involves like their bed and how it was made, and like no one but Odysseus would know like that the bed cannot really be moved because it's built around like a tree. It's this whole thing. It's the test. The bed itself is not important. It's the fact that she would not like openly like welcome him home until she was able to test that he was who he says he was. So I think being able to see the cost of the waiting and the maneuvering and everything on Penelope, I think was really powerful, and also just allowed us to get to see Anne like flex a little bit more as an actor. I thought, yeah, she was just amazing. So I think all of the female characters here are really elevated in the sense that they get nuance that the poem itself, obviously not written from a woman like perspective, not really allowing any sort of interiority or complexity to women in the same way that we kind of get more these days. I think this adaptation really allows for that with Helen, with Circe, with Calypso, even with Athena in a way. The way, yeah, I I liked the that what Nolan did. He's gotten some criticism for how he writes women in the past, but I don't think you can really bring that same criticism here. He really allows them to be very nuanced. Um,
Uh,
so yeah,
and while you're speaking, I just came up with another connection to his previous films, and I was struggling to figure out this particular one. But when you mentioned the pin, that reminds me of Inception with the
it's like a
totems.
totem. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one. I forgot about it. Like I wasn't even thinking about Inception in all of our like comparisons. It was like Tenet, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Oppenheimer, yeah, Inception, and Prestige. I need to think about those ones more. And Memento. I mean, all of those. I
Oh,
feel like,
and the non-linear storytelling that it
yeah,
instantly goes to Memento right
right,
there. So
right.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, all of his movies are interconnected in many ways.
Yeah.
And so that's all my prepared questions. So is there any piece of the adaptation, the myth you wanted to talk about before we wrap up? Is there anything we can cover on
Mm,
this Odyssey?
on this Odyssey. Um, gosh, I'm trying to think if I had anything else.
The
I think
Achilles
that we
mention, that was good.
honestly
Yeah.
covered everything that I wanted to cover. I mean, besides just like, you know, fawning over some of the like amazing emotional beats that we get in the third act, um, which I don't, we can talk more about that some other time. I don't think for the
Second stream.
stream. Yeah, honestly, we could do like a full Nolan stream at some point after you rewatch Tenet and we rewatch I think I saw someone online call it the posterity trilogy of Tenet, Oppenheimer, and the Odyssey.
All right.
Um,
I would do that.
so yeah, I think no,
Fine.
this movie was fire. You ought to see this movie.
Beat me to it.
You can do it. You can put it on screen later.
So that's the synopsis of this basically 2-hour conversation is you ought
Yeah.
to see this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate everyone in the chat. We had some fun discussions and yeah, speaking of the Achilles, somehow we got into Wishbone, which is great. That was a tangent that is definitely rivals any other tangents we do on this channel. We
Yeah.
do a lot of those. Yeah, my
What do
only
you think
final
I'll do next?
for
Any ideas?
Nolan.
What will Nolan do next? Yeah.
Oh, I've been bouncing around because he historically only focuses on one project at a time, and I feel like I don't think he'll do this, but he hasn't done a like I don't want to say proper, but like a very dense sci-fi movie. Like Interstellar is obviously sci-fi, but it's not like I don't know, like space battles and stuff like
Fantastical. Yeah.
fantastic. So I'm wondering if he would kind of tie in the stuff from Tenant, because that's I guess kind of near futuristic, right? Because dealing with
Yeah.
like entropy but that I could see that. But if not that, I don't know like what genre he hasn't really. I don't know. 'Cause he's done
I
war.
mean,
He's done
horror.
horror. Yeah,
It would
that's
be
you're probably right.
cool, a space horror type thing, like, you know,
Oh, Event
uh,
Horizon.
yeah, well, I
Oof.
haven't seen that, but yes, kind of like along that line. But I was thinking, like, have you seen Love, Death, Robots?
No, let
Oh,
me
well, my
double check that.
my illusion won't make sense then. But there's this one, it's like an anthology, like an animated anthology. Every episode is made by like a different kind of animation with a different story. They're not connected. There's this one in the first season called Beyond the Aquila Rift, and it's like they're in space, and well, I don't want to give it away, but it's kind of got like a horror, almost
Hmm.
Event Horizon-y kind of slant to it. It would be cool to see something like that. I mean, it's kind of like Alien. That's like space horror too, the Alien
Yeah.
movies. It would definitely be interesting to see him do something that would be a little more CGI. I know he likes like I want him to do practical, but something where like a Blade Runner 2049, like something
Hmm.
where there's like that fantastical element beyond. He does always like restrain himself from going overly fantastical or overly sci-fi, like with Tenet or the Magic and the Prestige. Like it's very grounded. Even here where you get like some monsters, it's still very grounded. So it would be cool to see him
And
go
that's
beyond.
and is there any other is there an IP or genre other than horror that you would want him to tackle? And I guess we already mentioned Lord of the Rings, so other than that too.
Yeah, because fantasy, I mean, something fantasy, like true fantasy, would be very cool. Like if he got, but see, I love how does a thing and then he's just so efficient. Like I think this movie was announced, which that's not to say he wasn't working on it before then,
Hmm.
but December 2024, it was announced like publicly that he's doing the Odyssey. That was the first it was heard. And here we are, July 2026. Like his turnaround, like I hear he's always like with his shooting schedules, he's like under budget, under schedule, like he is on top of his shit. So I don't want him to get like bogged down by a project that's gonna be
Hmm.
out of his hand, like something, yeah, like these people get tied up in these projects in project limbo. Like I don't want to see something like that happen to him. I want him to keep having independence. Carmen Sandiego.
I saw that too. Yeah, we'll have to figure
That
out
would
a
be
segue into
excellent.
that.
I
um,
do. That was another show from my childhood. That's someone should do a really good Carmen Sandiego for our time. But yeah,
I would say the other thing I would want to see Christopher Nolan do, which I don't know if this is dangerous to say. Like I don't think many movies have pulled it off. But doing something in American history like this the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, I feel like he could pull that off better than most. Like I don't know, we have the Patriot, I don't know, Glory, like a couple of movies, but maybe a modernized one of that could be interesting from his perspective. Because or even I guess we had Abraham Lincoln recently
we did
with Lincoln.
Oppenheimer.
He did Oppenheimer, so that's
See,
what the
I'm not like a
40s.
history person. I like this because it's like mythology, classics.
Hmm.
So, like history, war, like I only want it if it's like fantasy. There's a
Throw in
fantasy
some
or
elves.
sci-fi element. Yeah. Give me Dune, give me Lord of the Rings, like I'll watch war. like that. But don't give me Dunkirk, honestly. I can
Uh,
respect the craft, but like I just the setting is not like all of those World War II movies. I'm like, get me out of here.
oh, Band of Brothers is probably one of my favorite
Yeah, that's
miniseries
not my
too.
thing.
But yeah,
See, give me Captain America: The First Avenger. I'll watch World
hmm,
War II that way. But yeah,
fair.
straight
That's
war
fair.
doesn't do it for me.
Hmm. I guess we'll have to wait and see. One thing I
We
was gonna
will.
check, unless you knew, this would be off stream probably, because it'd be hard to find. But how long from his last project airing to announcing the Odyssey? So, I'll try to. Oppenheimer was fairly recently, right?
It came out in July 2023, so it's been 3 years since it for to here. But December 2024 was when the Odyssey was announced. So
Wow,
it's like in a
a
year and a
year.
half, maybe we'll get the announcement of what he's doing next, and then a year and a half from that, we could get it released. But I haven't looked at like all his movies. Like, is
Hmm.
that a because August of 2020 was Tenet. So it is like a 3 year cycle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. So in a year. So think about in between that, we're gonna have Dune 3, we're gonna have Rings of Power season 3, uh
Oh my
some
gosh. And then Dunkirk was July 2017. That is so bananas. It literally is 3 years. Even with COVID. Like he was like, no. Oh
wow.
my gosh. That is so
And
impressive.
and I was watching an interview and he said that he solely focuses on one project
Yeah.
and he doesn't stray. So yeah, if I ever got to interview him, my question instead of like a lot of people are just bluntly like, "What are you doing next?" It's just like all I want to know is does he have other ideas right now bouncing around in his head,
Yeah.
or does he literally done with project? All right, what's out there? What should I do?
Does he take like a break after the project releases to like enjoy not doing something?
Hopefully, like after
Oh my
traveling around, hopefully he
gosh.
gets
I
to relax
know.
a bit.
It's
Yeah,
impressive.
it's definitely kudos to him. I mean, he's been this one was under schedule, under budget. He made a profit on Interstellar with the cornfield, that famous story. So
Wait, I
yeah, he
don't know
does.
that one.
Oh yeah, so basically he planted all the crops for the cornfields, and mainly he wanted it for obviously the aesthetics and all that. But at the end of shooting, he was able to sell that farm and all the cornfields and make a profit on
Of
it.
course.
So yeah,
What if like he made such a profit that he was like not just under budget, but like made the budget
back
back
on the corn.
before the movie came out. Yeah, I don't even know what you would call that. Negative budget. He
Uh,
just funded
um,
his own movie through his cornfield. I don't know.
decides to become a
What a
farmer.
crazy, remarkable filmmaker. Not to like just be Dick Ryder, but come on.
And,
Like who's
and
doing it
it's
like him?
and a thing to
There's some great
reflect on.
filmmakers, yeah.
Yeah, to reflect on our lives right now. We live in a time where we have Steven Spielberg and kind of like I don't yeah, like he's still releasing stuff now. And we had him, we've had Christopher Nolan, obviously, we've had uh Denis Villeneuve, I can't pronounce his name greatly. We
Yeah.
have uh Ridley Scott. I mean, there's endless amount of directors right now, but like, there's been some great stuff coming out in our lifetime, and we're fortunate enough to have been alive for the Lord of the Rings movies and the conversations of potential more rights being released. So we could have an exciting next couple of decades if that pans out.
Yeah.
Between those fandoms and what the other directors have up their sleeves and up and coming directors like you mentioned Backroom and we've had the Obsession movie
Obsession.
too. So there's a lot of there's hope for the future in cinema, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we should probably wrap up. It's been it's been an odyssey.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I appreciate everyone in the chat for joining us. So just to recap, this is Fellowship of Fandoms, where we're branching off of Fellowship of Fans, which is strictly Tolkien related, Middle Earth, and moving into other fandoms. So definitely, as you watch this, if you have other areas you would like us to cover, so Nolan films, any sci-fi fantasy shows. Film Club is going to branch out into more of the artsy realms at times, so covering films that might not fit the quote unquote nerdy realm, if you will. But we want to dive into all things cinema, so whatever's out there, we'll take a look. So if you have any recommendations, definitely let us know. And I guess how we'll leave this stream is now we don't need to. We know the answer because it's just Jess and I. Go see the Odyssey. It's worth it. Go see it in the biggest screen you possibly can. See it a couple times. Get the giant horse popcorn bucket if you can. Um, and I don't know what you'll do with it. I have it, and I kind of regret it now because I have no space for it, but it's there. And yeah, until next time, definitely keep an eye out and subscribe, like, and all those fun things because we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. And over at Fellowship of Fans, Rings of Power Season 3 promotion is probably going to be gearing up as soon as next weekend or Friday when Comic Con hits us with a potential teaser or something fun. So look out for that if that's your cup of tea. And yeah, appreciate everyone that's been along. And until next time, let us know in the comments what we should cover. All right. Thank you all.